My name is Adriana, and I'm 38 years old. I have a husband named Ray. He is the eldest of 3 brothers, both of whom are married and have 1 child each. Among the younger brothers are Truett and Harley, who are also very kind and good people. Their wives are both lovely. Lately I've been hearing a lot about troubles between my brothers-in-law, but I have nothing to do with such things. I'm blessed with great sisters-in-law, and we get along well. But there is one problem. Ray's mother, my mother-in-law. When we got married, there was no problem at all. My easygoing and kind-hearted mother-in-law, who had a cute smile, was also kind to me. I thought I was lucky to have such a wonderful mother-in-law. My father-in-law, who has passed away now, was also a very kind person. When I married Ray, I remember thinking how lucky I was to marry someone and become part of such a lovely family. A few years after our marriage, his younger brothers-in-law, Truett and Harley, got married. Soon after, my sisters-in-law became pregnant. That's when my mother-in-law's attitude towards me started to change. At first it was just small things. Ray is the oldest son, so we lived in an apartment near his parents' house and visited them regularly. One day, I wasn't served tea anymore. At that time my father-in-law had already passed away, so I thought my mother-in-law had just forgotten. I asked her, "Mother-in-law, may I have some tea?" She replied, "Think for yourself." I had never been spoken to like that by my mother-in-law before, and I was so surprised and shocked that my voice trembled when I said, "I'm sorry." Looking back, this might have been the beginning of it all. After that, my mother-in-law blamed me for not being able to have children and began to berate me. Of course, I didn't say anything to my husband. In fact, it seemed like I was spoiling him more than ever before. My husband himself was happy to have his mother's support, so he completely ignored the fact that I was being bullied so badly. Days like this continued for several years, until one day we celebrated the 4th birthday of the daughter of one of my husband's brothers, Jenna, at my in-laws' house. Everyone gathered to have a birthday party. My husband and I bought a gift and headed to my in-laws' house. When we arrived, almost everyone was already there. "You're late. Is everything okay?" my mother-in-law asked. "I'm sorry, the road was congested," I replied. "I wasn't asking you. You're always slow getting ready. Don't trouble Ray, since putting on makeup doesn't make much of a difference anyway," she said to me. Ray saw how she treated me, but as usual, he didn't try to help me and quickly went inside. It would be nice if he could say something to his mother on my behalf. I followed my husband into the living room with the faint hope that things might turn out differently. By the time we arrived, everyone was already there, including Jenna, my niece, and the star of the day. Jenna ran over to me with a big smile on her face. "Happy birthday," I said to her. "Thank you for coming," she replied with a smile, and I felt my heart lighten. But then my mother-in-law, not wanting to dampen the joyous mood, said, "Stop chatting and help with the preparations already," in a tone only I could hear. "I'm sorry," I murmured quietly before heading towards the kitchen. There, I found Jenna's mother and my sister-in-law, Estelle. "I'll help too," I said to her. "We just ordered sushi for today, so all you need to do is prepare the chopsticks and plates. I just finished, so please take it easy," Estelle said to me. I saw that there might be a lot of cooking and cleaning to do, but apparently not. My mother-in-law was just unhappy that I was having a good time chatting with Jenna. Estelle and I carried small bowls and chopsticks to the tables and set them for each person. As we set the tables, I smiled a bit. We put the sushi on each table and everything was ready. Everyone started to sit down. As my husband Ray took the seat designated by my mother-in-law, I delightedly sat next to him. "Wait, Truett is supposed to sit next to Ray, so you can't sit there." "Then where can I sit?" I asked, but I was ignored. I ended up just standing there like a pole. After a while, my mother-in-law said, "Well, shall we begin?" But I still hadn't sat down, and there were no more seats with sushi left for me. "Excuse me, mother-in-law, where should I sit?" I asked. "Oh, I completely forgot about you. Just sit wherever there's an empty seat," she replied. I sat in the seat at the far end, but there were only small plates and chopsticks there, no sushi. I had a bad feeling, but I mustered up the courage to ask my mother-in-law, "Mother-in-law, there seems to be one piece of sushi missing." "Oh dear, I must have miscounted due to the number of people." "I'm sorry, Adriana, would you like some bread instead?" my mother-in-law said with a smile. "Bread from last night in the kitchen," that's what she said. I was really confused, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to care and uttered, "Let's eat." Everyone else seemed confused too, but my husband Ray followed my mother-in-law's lead and started eating the sushi. As I began to eat my bread, Estelle, who was sitting next to me, whispered, "Adriana, we'll split it in half." "I'm sorry," I said. "It's all right. It's not fair that you don't have any. Besides, I won't be able to finish it all by myself anyway," she said. "Thank you," I replied. "Wait a minute. What are you doing, Estelle? You're still young and want a second child, right? Then you have to eat a lot," my mother-in-law said. Although Estelle was worried about me, my mother-in-law said with a smile, "It's not like Adriana wants any children anyway." Watching my reaction, Estelle found herself in a difficult position, and I felt sorry for her too. "I'm okay, Estelle, so I'll just take the bread. Thank you very much," I said. Although Estelle wanted to say something with a pained expression, I pretended not to notice and started eating bread. I realized how pathetic I was, being the only one eating bread at the joyous feast, but I couldn't complain because I wasn't in a position to do so, so I endured and ate the bread. After everyone had eaten sushi, it was time to give Jenna her gift. I had bought something she had wanted for a while. When I went to give it to her, Ray snatched it away and gave it to Jenna instead. My mother-in-law was giggling again as she watched, even though I had gone to buy the present and paid for it myself. "Thank you." Jenna immediately began opening the wrapping paper, and upon seeing the contents, exclaimed while leaning towards me with joy, "Adriana, this is the one I told you I wanted. Thank you for remembering." She said that to me, but my mother-in-law quickly retorted, "Jenna, that's not from Adriana. Ray bought it for you." However, Jenna insisted, "No, I told Adriana I wanted this. Uncle wasn't supposed to know." Jenna repeatedly expressed her gratitude towards me, although her words made me feel relieved. Not everyone was pleased, specifically my husband and my mother-in-law. Throughout the conversation, I threw meaningful glances at Jenna every time she backed me up. Ignoring the hostility of the others, I continued chatting with Jenna, but then my mother-in-law interrupted. "Let's have a cake now, Adriana. Could you bring it over?" I had no choice but to get up and say, "Let's talk later, Jenna." I carried a fork and a dish created by Ingrid, my mother-in-law, as well as a knife for cutting the cake. The cake that was brought out looked magnificent, and it turned out to be from a famous store. Then my husband said, "Mom, I'll pay for the cake." He said this without even consulting me. Well, I had bought the gift for Jenna, so it was only natural that he should do something like this. When my husband saw me, he whispered to me quietly, "You'll pay for it first. I don't have any cash in my wallet today." I thought, is he kidding me? But it was too late. He had already said it. My mother-in-law whispered the amount to her, and I reluctantly pulled the money out of my wallet and paid. Her mother-in-law began cutting the cake and distributing it in order. "Did everyone get their cake? Shall we begin?" That's how my mother-in-law addressed us. Here we go again. I had a feeling this would happen, but as I suspected, there wasn't enough cake for me. There's my mother-in-law, my husband, Truett, Jenna, Estelle, and then the third son who joined us today, Harley. The cake was cut into 6 equal pieces. I noticed that there wasn't enough cake for me and immediately spoke up. "Mother-in-law, I doesn't have a piece of cake." But my mother-in-law just laughed and said, "It's okay, Adriana could stand to lose a few pounds. Besides, I went through the trouble of cutting it so nicely into 6 pieces. I won't be able to share it again." I felt uncomfortable and muttered, "It's okay, I'm fine. It's Jenna's birthday, so let's enjoy the cake without worrying about me." But honestly, I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to scream at my mother-in-law and my husband, but it's my niece's birthday, and I didn't want to ruin the mood. I couldn't stand being there any longer, so I said, "Excuse me, I'm going to head home now." And I left by myself. Of course, my husband didn't offer to come with me. "I'm driving home so you can take the bus." I returned home by bus as instructed. A few hours later, my husband returned home in a good mood. I was out of my wits with today's event, so I asked my husband to do something about it. However, he just sneered and said, "You're being too much. You can't live life like this." I replied, "I didn't have any sushi or cake, and yet you didn't say anything either." Then he said, "Didn't Mommy just say it was a small mistake? It's just sushi and a cake. Don't be cheap." I was hurt by his words and eventually locked myself in my room. These events have shown that I'm the only one to blame, and we didn't even attempt to resolve the issues through discussion. I have always been patient, but I was reaching my limit. For the first time, I seriously considered divorce and realized that our relationship had reached its limit. 1 week later, there was going to be a fireworks festival nearby, and my husband, my mother-in-law, Truett, Estelle, Jenna, and I were invited to go. I didn't really want to be in the same place as my husband and my mother-in-law after what happened on Jenna's birthday, so I politely declined. But then Jenna said, "I don't want to go if Adriana is not coming." I reluctantly agreed to join them. We gathered a little before the fireworks started and decided to enjoy the food stalls until then. I didn't have much of an appetite, so I just watched. But when Jenna spotted the food stalls, she said, "I want some fried chicken." Suddenly, a group of men with cameras approached us and said, "Excuse me, may we talk to you?" They were from a TV station and were doing live coverage of the fireworks festival. It was a famous news program that even I knew about. They said they wanted to film our happy family, including Jenna, and everyone started getting excited. Since my husband, my mother-in-law, and even Truett agreed, the crew immediately began asking Jenna questions as she enjoyed her fried chicken. "Do you like the chicken? How does it taste?" "Yeah, it's tasty," Jenna responded with a smile. "But there's so much of it. Can you finish it all by yourself?" "I'll give the rest to Mom and Adriana," Jenna said while taking my hand. "It was my birthday the other day, but Adriana couldn't have any cake. Grandma always treats Adriana badly, so today I decided to give some joy to Adriana." Jenna beamed at me as she spoke. The staff looked uncomfortable, but kept the conversation going with forced smiles. "My grandma is very mean. On my birthday, everyone was eating sushi except for Adriana. She only got 2 boiled eggs. It was very cruel," Jenna said. Upon hearing this, the show's staff realized that things had gone too far and quickly wrapped up the interview. Of course, Jenna meant no harm. She didn't fully understand how live broadcasting worked and was just trying to protect me. Soon after, messages started pouring into my mother-in-law from people who had watched the broadcast. "How could you only give boiled eggs to your daughter-in-law? That's just terrible. You always said you had a good relationship with your daughter-in-law, but it looks like you were just doing her wrong." Neighbors and relatives were furious one after another. Eventually, my mother-in-law and husband left, allowing me to enjoy the fireworks display with Jenna's family. A weight lifted from my heart. A few days later, I decided to have a discussion with my husband and my mother-in-law at their home. When I told them that I wanted a divorce, my mother-in-law shouted, "No, that's not acceptable. I won't allow a divorce." However, it was only through Jenna's and others' involvement that everyone learned that I had suffered abuse at the hands of my mother-in-law, and that my husband had never helped me. When I mentioned this, they both turned pale and lowered their eyes. "You'd better go away with your mom who loves you more than I do, Mama's boy," I finished. I smiled and said my goodbyes to my in-laws. Since my husband seemed resigned to the divorce, he readily agreed, and it went through without incident. Now I live alone in an apartment near my workplace. My ex-husband and I lived in an apartment together before, but I paid for 80% of it, so he couldn't afford to stay there and ended up moving back in with his mother. Since then, Jenna had refused to see her grandmother and never went back to see her. On the other hand, I still regularly meet with Jenna's family and maintain our relationships. "Adriana, you have to celebrate my birthday with us next year too." When Jenna said that, I couldn't help but look forward to celebrating her birthday next year.